What's up, boys and girls? Prophetic here. I haven't done a video in a while, and that's because my head has been down getting ready for some family events, and also work has been a little crazy. And also just putting my head down, learning a few things in open source software land. Been messing around with databases, nextcloud, nextcloud on Pi, self-hosting on like a spare laptop, and just learning the ropes. Not getting too far, but definitely making progress. Um, I've been thinking about the opportunity that open source software offers to the masses, and how there's always, for any given Linux project, there's always like that last 10% that it's missing, that makes it really hard to adopt for someone who's not used to like open source software. And it comes down to the C word, convenience. And even with the great efforts from projects just like Nextcloud, to make it easy, there's always that last 10% that is so inconvenient and so not so difficult, but from a new user could be so difficult. And it got me thinking, what is the appropriate expectations that we're setting for open source software and as a viable alternative? Um, and one of the, I guess, examples I use is like Tesla and the electric car, that on so many occasions, like two occasions, Tesla was really on the ropes financially. And the reason was because despite how far they've come with their cars, especially at the first, the first somewhat successful model, which was a sports car. Um, it wasn't enough because the testing with the batteries. There's always an issue with now it being self-driving, where it just got so close, but not close enough. And what I mean by that is that for something that is really important, it's not good enough for it to work 70% of the time, 80% of the time, not even 90% of the time. There are certain things where we have to have it has to be rock solid for the masses to give trust to it and to have that credibility, to have that reputation. And a lot of the open source projects just doesn't have that. And so when it came to legislation and policy, Tesla was always facing up against the issues of that last 5%, the last 3%. And they're not they've pretty much made it. But again, if they didn't say 95% is good enough, we have to go 99.9%, they wouldn't be around. If they didn't have this like utter commitment to excellence and just going all in and getting to as close as 100% as possible, it wouldn't have worked, because we're dealing with lives on the line. A 1% error can lead to a death of an individual. And when it comes to high stakes, we're not dealing with, like, when it comes to things like Nextcloud, we're not dealing with like lives on the line, but people are like emotionally invested in their data. And Nextcloud, at least recently I heard, still has some issues with big, like large files. And it's hard to really just 100% go all in on services like this because of that last 10%. Um, Also, the setup, when people try to say it's your own Google, it's your own personal Dropbox, um, as a way to promote the product, it really does an injustice, a disservice. It's almost like saying like Linux, it just works. Well, except when it doesn't. And it really puts a bad taste in people's mouths. And so For example, for Nextcloud, there's an issue with accessing, not so much issue, but a technical hurdle with accessing your data outside of your home network. So you can have it installed. It can be accessible on your home network for whatever reason. When I used a Raspberry Pi, it was pretty much easy enough to get it accessible on my home network using Nextcloud on the Snap. Have it on one of my machine, but had some issues trying to access it from other laptops. And so it comes down to troubleshooting mode. And you run into these things where it's like after some time, I'm going to eventually going to figure it out, and people will figure it out. But the masses, the average person, won't bother anymore. They're just going to punt it, and they're just going to go right back to OneDrive for Microsoft or Google Drive or Dropbox, and just go back to those things. And so I know for us techies and, those of us who love open source software and love Linux and tinkering and all those things, that's okay for us. But if we were really considering other people like the masses, we have to really think creatively about how we can overcome that last 10%. And if we do that, we might find that more people will use it, and conversion of those tools might increase significantly. And why should we care about that? Why should we care what other people use? Well, if my data is on my server and my information, and I share it with someone else and they're using Nextcloud as well, sharing information becomes more secure and it's better. And whereas if I'm sharing with someone a file or something like that, and they just take something that was in Nextcloud and they save it on their Google Drive, it's like why even bother with Nextcloud then? Because if someone's going to stick it into their own software, their own storage system that uses those big tech companies, it's like you kind of almost defeat the purpose a little bit. So it really comes down to just if it's better for more people to use services like this, then there could be an effort to kind of remove that 10%. And again, there's not a knock on Nextcloud. They've done, I think, everything they could possibly do to make this like accessible and workable. I mean, they have Dockers, they have things you can do, just straight up downloads. They have snaps. They have people in the community that do variations like Nextcloud Pi. And so they make it super easy. But I have to admit that last 10%, I think if with a little more creativity, a little more resources, things can be done. And just for example, just to kick it out there, I know this might have security implications and you have to think through that, but there are services that are routers and storage units in one. So I think there's an article on CNET, the top 5 routers that also store information. And again, aside from security aside, with the right, hardening, that could be a solution. It's just a plug and play solution. Even if it's not that, if it's going to be something with making your information accessible outside of your home network, then maybe there's opportunity there. Like there's companies that offer people a static IP at a cost, and maybe Nextcloud could get in on that and bake in those kind of services and make some money off of that. So instead of paying, Microsoft Office, $10 a month for like I think 2 terabytes of storage or whatever it is, I pay $297 and I can store as much. Put as much storage as I can plug into my network device, or my Raspberry Pi, whatever it is, and it's just a couple clicks, and I have a static IP that I can access for outside the network. And so so those are just kind of things that could be possible. I know even just from seeing the network, seeing Nextcloud on the network. I know for Plex, it's for the most part. It's does a great job at capturing the servers on the network. I know it's the same thing, but again, it's not with little imagination and working through some of these things from a consumer perspective and getting out of our techie bubble. um, I think we can serve a lot of people and do a lot of good, and that's really the heart behind this. It's not just to have these things, just to have it, and for us to have fun with it for ourselves. I think the heart and spirit behind open source is sharing it and helping others see the value and benefit of the tenets behind free and open source software, and not just preaching at them, but give them a taste of what that freedom can feel like. And I know for me, when I heard of Nextcloud, I was like, wow, this could be an amazing thing. And unfortunately, I'm still not there yet with using it fully, but step in the right direction. But man, I'm a father. I'm expecting another baby. My house is has to be maintained too, and we just have to be more mindful about the learning curve. And for those who want to learn everything behind the stuff, they're going to do that no matter what. I think we got to let go of this thing where we have to pivot people between decisions of like, oh, if you want to use the software, you have to learn the ins and outs of it, and if you don't, then don't use it. I think that's kind of harsh, and I think that's unrealistic too, with the nature of the day to day grind that people have and the lives they want to lead. They don't want to spend hours trying to tinker and learn something. Let that be with those who want to do that, who want to do that. There are those who are not in that position, but they deserve to own their data. Like they deserve to have this kind of service. Like, what, they're not worthy of it because they don't want to spend hours and hours to get certified in networking, or learn how to code, or learn bash scripts and something like that. Like, is that the real barrier here? I don't know. It just it's kind of counterintuitive, or counterproductive rather, to the mission of free and open source software. So just a little rant on that last 10%, and how that is still plaguing projects in the open source world. And just I don't know, more could be done, I think, but it does take someone to think outside the box, or outside the cloud, and make it happen. What do you think? Um, I think that's also an opportunity to earn money by thinking through that last 10%, to have to have that automation set up in such a way that they can just a couple clicks take it from here in Nextcloud, and the data is still on my network. It's at home, but they help with the network access part of it. And I don't know, just thinking out loud here. Um, that being said, I catch you guys on the next rant, and yeah, have a good one. Peace.